Mi sentite?
Adesso sì.
Ok, ma io non sentivo Alessandro prima, cioè non lo sentivo nessuno.
No, non sentivo nessuno neanch'io, ma adesso almeno te ti sento.
Ok, stiamo sistemando. Bene.
Spegni un po'. Adesso sì. Vorreste sentirmi?
Sì.
Ok, cool.
Ora sì.
Così non serve, capito? Con questo microfono qua, chiunque parli nella stanza. Vediamo, ci sono 7 messaggi.
Sì, no, siamo noi che stiamo scrivendo. Adesso scrivo a Marco che sono magari
Se mi sentite?
Sì, Marco, ti sentiamo.
Tutti? Ok, va bene. Allora mi scuso per non essere lì per il primo seminario PercUP, è un seminario un po' particolare, ma siamo molto contenti di ospitarlo all'interno dei nostri seminari di percezione e spero che l'aula sia piena, non lo so. Benvenuti. E quindi non so se qualcun altro voleva introdurre lo speaker, ma faccio, se volete, una introduzione super veloce, cioè abbiamo qui a Padova in presenza oggi Alessandro Soranzo che viene dall'università originariamente, almeno dall'università di Trieste, e quindi da quella tradizione degli studi di percezione, che però poi è stato per molti anni ed è ancora oggi in Inghilterra studiando sia percezione del colore e della brightness, ma più recentemente anche aspetti di attenzione e in particolare oggi parlerà di visual perspective taking. So se qualcun altro vuol dire qualcos'altro.
Grazie Marco. Io ho preparato la presentazione in inglese, mi è stato detto, it's ok?
Sì, va benissimo in inglese.
Okay then, so thank you very much for inviting me to this series of conferences. For those who don't know me, I'm Alessandro Soranzo. I'm a director of the Center of Behavioral Science and Applied Psychology at Sheffield University, as Marco just kindly mentioned. So yeah, among my interest of research interests, there is the topic of attention. This is a very important topic because we are constantly bombarded by information, and I've always been puzzled by how we are able to select only few information among the huge variety of information that we are constantly bombarded. And according to Posner, attention is a process that allocates cognitive resources to efficiently process information. And among this broad topic, what I'm going to focus today is on a specific effect. This is the effect. So probably those who were at home didn't see. So I stare outside the window, and the purpose of that was to take your attention, the people that are here in the room, to look where I was looking at. Okay, so one of the stimuli that is very important to drive our attention is the presence of another person in our visual scene. So as you can see in this slide, this woman is pointing toward your right, and so our attention cannot help but being affected by the presence of this woman and moving our attention toward toward the right. So, so this was the introduction. This talk will last about 40 minutes and is divided in 5 steps. The first, we're going to see how this phenomenon, so the shifting of attention because of the presence of somebody else in the scene, has been measured. The interpretations of this phenomenon, psychological interpretation of why this is happening. Then we're going to see a dual model process that we have just recently published. And then we're going to see how this model can interpret current findings in literature. And then at the end, we conclude with the 2 experiments that have not been published yet, only presented to conferences, that are a direct test of the model that we are putting forward. So how can we measure this phenomenon? Samson and her collaborators devised the so-called dot perspective task paradigm. So participants are sitting in front of a screen and they are looking at the virtual room, and they are asked to confirm whether the number of disks visible by a prompted perspective, it could be either you, so the participant themselves, or the other, correspond to a previously shown digit number. And the other is represented by a cube in the middle of the room. The dependent variables are the reaction time and the errors. And what is manipulated is the perspective, as I said, you and other, and the consistency that is going to be defined next. To better appreciate the task, it's very important to appreciate this task because it's fundamental to get the gist of this talk. I'm showing here exactly how the participants, the task that the participants have to complete when they do this visual perception, dot perspective task paradigm. So they are first presented with a perspective. In this case, you, it means you, the participant. So now you have to take your own perspective. Then after 750 milliseconds, there is a digit number, in this case, number 1. And finally, they're presented with this visual scene, okay? So, and they have to press one button from the keyboard saying, yes, I can see one disk, or no, I cannot see the disk. So in this simple case, the right answer is yes, because the participant can indeed see one disk. Then let's see another condition, the condition other. So in this case, the participant has to take the perspective of the avatar that is presented on the screen. Digit number is 1. And now they have to press as quick as they can a button to confirm whether, in this case, this woman is seeing a disk or not. And in this case, the right answer is no, because we can see the disk, but the woman, this avatar, cannot see the disk. Okay, let's see another condition just to make sure that we understand the task. You, so take your own perspective, 1, and the right answer here is yes. Okay. Notice that there is a difference between this condition, the condition that we saw at the beginning when the prompt was still you. The difference is that in the first case, both you and the avatar, we are seeing the same number of disks. Okay, but in this condition is different, and this we go to what I said before, that we are going to define the variable consistency. This leads to 2 consistency trials. We have consistent trials where you and the other can see the same number of disks. So in the top right figure here, you see that you can see one disk and the avatar can also see one disk. Inconsistent trials, instead, the other and the participant see a different number of disks, and it is shown in the figure below. The task is therefore very simple. Participants understand the task, and it lasts good 15 minutes because you change the number of disks. It goes usually from 1 to 3. You change the direction of the avatar, could be toward the left, toward the right, and you have all the possible combinations. Okay. So what happens when you do this task? Well, you see a typical interference pattern. So you have more errors and slower reaction times in inconsistent trials. So when judging both your own perspective and the perspective of the other. So in the inconsistent trials, when you and when you and the avatar shown on the screen see different things, it takes more time for you to confirm whether the number of discs was the same or not. Okay. This talk focuses only on the condition U. This is the most interesting one because, from what I know, there is no disagreement in literature. Everybody agrees that when you are asked to judge other people's perspective, it is involved the theory of mind. So, an example: if I have to judge what you in this room can see now, I would probably overestimate what you can see from that position because I can see something more from that corner than what you can see, and therefore it takes into account my theory of mind. Okay, so this is not very surprising. What is interesting instead is the condition U, because the participant could just ignore the avatar when they are requested to do the task. When there is the prompt U, what you see, who cares where the avatar is facing? Okay. Nevertheless, you find a clear interference pattern. So, as I said, there are different interpretations. There are two interpretations of this phenomenon. There is the domain general account. So, this account focuses on the directional features of the other. So as you see, I've drawn this outline of the silhouette of the person in yellow to indicate that your attention goes where the posture, so in this case, there is also an arm pointing, the nose, the posture of the lady pointing toward one direction. And this is why, according to this interpretation, our attention is shifted, in this case, toward the right. But there is a second interpretation that I represented with this silly brain, which says, no, what is important here, and this is called the social mentalizing account, and as the name says, it is the mental features of the other that drive your attention. It is because they are, you take into account, so it is very similar to the theory of mind, right? So it is saying, look, you are shifted towards a specific direction because you take into account what the other person is seeing. So it is the reverse, the mirrored version of the theory of mind. And indeed, the first authors, Samson herself, named this phenomenon alter-centric intrusion to mimic the egocentric intrusion that is the case when you do more errors and slower reaction time in the condition other, that we said is not interesting for our purpose. Okay, so you see the social mentalizing account still refers to the theory of mind, while the domain general account focuses on the directional, more perceptual features of the other. So since 2010, I think about, if not more, 100 of papers have been published on this topic, and they've tested a number of different cues as other using this dot perspective taking paradigm. You see, it goes from arrows from bee, a bear, a zombie, a chair, etc., etc. And because the research question was, would the interference persist if the social mentalizing features of the other are removed? So, because those researchers said, if you can still find the interference pattern, then it means the directional features are enough to direct attention, right? However, the research has reached an impasse because similar studies found contrasting results. And let's see an example. Let's start from a study that Marco Bertamini and my former PhD student and I did a few years ago. And we said that participants saw a classical visual perspective taking task, but we said to the participant, look, the avatar is blindfolded, so she can't see. Sorry, I forgot to mention, we also changed the gender, so the avatar could be a male or a female figure, okay? Or we controlled also for the handiness of the participant, the button for the yes and no could be switched. So all these things were controlled. So we told the participant when they had to take the perspective of the other, they have to say not where the other is seeing, because we know that the other is not seeing anything, but where the other is facing, okay? And what we did in this condition, we found a normal, classical interference pattern. So participants were slower and they did more errors when the avatar was facing away from what you could see. So basically when there was a mismatch between what you and the avatar could see. So these results clearly support the domain general account. So it is the directional feature of the avatar that are generating the phenomenon. However, a very, very similar experiment was done by Furlanetto and his colleagues. And the instructions were slightly different, and this is probably the key of the thing. So they had an avatar, maybe here the figure is not very clear, but the avatar was wearing some goggles, and they had the two types of goggles. They could be red or green. And the instruction to the participant were, look, when the avatar has red goggles, he is blindfolded. Okay, so he can see. When instead the goggles are green, then he can see. And what they found was that the interference pattern was present only with green goggles. So only when they knew, the participant knew, yes?
So in your experiments, the guy was always blindfolded?
He always blindfolded, always blindfolded. And we compare, this is a very good point, and we're gonna go back to the end. We compare the result with a not blindfolded avatar, but with a between measure design with different participants. Instead here was within, you spotted exactly where the problem was. Well, the problem, the difference, the key difference was there. Okay. So this is the story up to here, but we thought that there is a confounding mentalizing and social feature where the directional features. Because in all experiments that they have been used in the past, both the directional and the mentalizing feature were coherently pointing in the same direction, okay? And therefore, you went into a very long debate. Like, for example, I showed you that there was a chair. They used the chair to direct attention, and the chair was actually able to generate the interference. But the supporters of the social mentalizing account, they said, okay, but when you see a chair, you assume that somebody is sitting on it. So there is still, even the chair might have some social component in it. In addition, and probably more importantly, there is a logical fallacy here, because if you prove that the pure directional stimuli orient your attention, this doesn't exclude that you can have the same effect with the pure social mentalizing stimuli. So proving that the pure directional stimuli shift your attention is not a good evidence against the social mentalizing account. And therefore, we thought, how can we isolate the social feature of the cube? So we devised this new other, and it is a dragon, and we call this dragon the social only other. Why? Because as you can see, the dragon has an arrowhead shaped tail pointing in the opposite direction of its muzzle, right? And the purpose of the tail is to cancel out the directional feature of the dragon. So if you have the directional feature pointing to the right and an equal directional feature pointing to the left, then they two cancel out, and what remains is only, when you ask the participant, tell me what the dragon can see, you have left only the social mentalizing aspect. So this is why, so you see, I've canceled the tail and the muzzle, and we have only the brain working here. So with these stimuli, we isolated the characteristics, the social characteristics, social features of the ADA. Well, you can say, but how can you be sure that the tail was good enough in cancelling out the directional feature of the dragon? Well, bear in mind that when I say directional feature, I don't mean only the muzzle, but the full posture. So in this case, you have the wings, you have the pose, so everything you have to cancel out. So with the size of the tail, of the arrow-shaped tail of the dragon, was selected by means of a Posner type of experiment. I'm not sure you're familiar, but very simple. A Posner type of experiment, you have a fixation cross on the screen, then you have a cube appearing on the screen, and a target can appear either to the right or to the left of the screen. And your task as a participant is just to press a button as quick as you can when you see the target. And in this case, there is no perspective to take. It's very simple paradigm. And we compare the results of this of the dragon with this kind of ADA. You see, it's the same dragon as before, but in this case with the arrow-shaped tail removed. Okay, this looks like a chicken to me, so we can call it like a chicken. And we call this stimuli social plus directional ADA. Why? Because both the directional and the mentalizing features were both coherently pointing in the same direction as all the previous ADAs that have been used in the past. Okay, yeah.
In the previous type of dragon,
Yeah.
so you say there is the tail of the dragon which is pointing right, and directional features point right. But actually, for example, the face of the dragon, I mean, I can see the face of the dragon. Not so well because I'm too far away from the dragon, but in general, I can see the eyes of the dragon, I can see the nose of the dragon. And these are, I mean, you included nose, eyes within the directional features before, when we were talking about, for example, the face of a human being.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the point of the tail is to have the same weight, or the directional feature of the same weight as the muzzle, the eye. Okay. So this is why I said, you see here, they cancel out. And we did a Posner type of experiment to make sure.
Sorry.
Does it make sense? Okay. You didn't pay attention.
Thank you.
Okay, so when you have both directional features pointing opposite, they cancel each other, right? You look at me like this, and you ask me, where do I have to go? And I do like that. You say, you're crazy. So I have to go right or left, right? So because they cancel each other. So let's see the results of this preliminary Posner experiment, which was conducted just for the sake of establishing if which was the best size of the tail. So let's also familiarize with this type of graphs, because we are going to see a number of them during this talk. So we adopted the Bayesian approach to analyze the data for many reasons, but one of the reasons that is very important, one feature of the Bayesian approach to analyze the data, is that you have a direct, simple measure or probability measure of the null hypothesis. Okay, so we wanted to have no interference. Interference also, from now on, interference means in reaction time, the time it takes in the inconsistent trial, that usually should be longer, minus the time you take to press the button in the consistent trial, that should be faster, right? So we are, if there is an interference, you have a positive distribution. If there is no interference, your distribution should be around 0. Another feature, interesting feature of the Bayesian approach is that you don't have a single number as an estimate, but you have a distribution of the possible parameters. So the distribution that you see here, the two Gaussian distributions, are the probability that the difference between inconsistent and consistent trials is all single probabilities. Okay, and as you can see for the social only, the other thing, before running the experiment, you establish a region of practically equivalence. So it is a region which you see around 0, plus and minus 1 standard deviation usually, which indicates that if your distribution mostly falls inside the region of practical equivalence, it means that there is no difference. So you have a good, and you can have also a precise estimate of the probability that there is no difference. So as a different from the frequentistic approach, you have the probability of the null hypothesis, okay? As you can see, the chicken was clearly generating an interference, or practically all the distribution of the possible parameters, values of the difference between inconsistent and consistent were outside the region of practically equivalence, while the social only, our dragon, was not generating any interference. So we were good to go. We decided, okay, we are good to go. There is, when you measure purely the directional feature of the AVA, the dragon is not capable of generating interference from a directional perceptual characteristic. In addition, we are also happy that the chicken, the dragon without the arrow-shaped tail, was generating an interference, because we are confident that our stimuli were comparable with the stimuli that have been used in the past. Okay, now let's see the result of the real experiment. So we conducted a proper dot perspective task. We compared the results of the dragon with the results of the chicken. Again, remember that there were many different trials. The disk could have been 1, 2, or 3. The perspective was alternating, and you have consistent, inconsistent trials, and you have filler trials, for example, where there was no, also the other was not present in the scene. So here are the results. Again, we are going to go into the details of the results in a second, but I just wanted to remember that we also measure the condition ADA. So there was an equal number of times where the perspective that the participant had to take was themselves, and when the perspective was the perspective of the ADA. Okay, so, but again, we focus only on the condition self, only on the condition where the prompt was U. Okay, let's see the result of the reaction times. And as you can see, again, this is different. This is a visual perspective taking task. So don't be confused with the Posner task, because here the participant had to press the button to confirm whether the digit was the same or not as the digits shown before. And as you can see, in the social only condition, the possible interference value were all well inside the region of practical equivalence. So the social only characteristic, the social features of our AVA were not able to generate an interference. So this result, whilst as you can see from the distribution below, the social plus directional AVA could clearly generate an interference. So this result was clearly in favor of the main general account. So this was in line with the blindfolded avatar that we did a few years before. So we were quite happy. So we thought that we have ruled out the domain general, the mentalizing, the social mentalizing interpretation. However, when we went to measure the errors, we found a practically identical number of errors in the dragon and the chicken, a practically identical interference pattern. So basically, participants did much more errors in the inconsistent trials rather than the inconsistent trial, even in the dragon condition. Okay, and this result, as opposite from what we saw before, this result favors the social mentalizing account, because we said that the directional features were cancelled, and so it seems that the pure social features are able to generate an interference in the pattern of error. So this was very surprising to us. So let's summarize what we learned from this experiment with this bidirectional cue. We learned that there is no interference in reaction time, supporting the domain general account, but there is a clear interference in the error rate. So how can we explain these results? Well, first of all, we have to notice that, and this is something that was shown in literature before. I'm not sure why we have this bar. Anyway, Prismetal and his colleague was one among other scientists who noticed that in some tasks, reaction time and errors measure different things. And this seems to be our case. In addition, Chun and his colleague found that suggested a distinction between the external and internal attention. External attention is the selection of information through the senses, whilst internal attention is the selection of information through internal working memory. If you notice in the task, participants have to take in working memory the perspective and the digit that was shown, okay? And this involves an attention, not to something that is visible when the virtual room is presented, but something that they have in their memory. And incidentally, only 10 days ago, Hayoui, I'm not sure how to spell it, found exactly that, found an involvement of the working memory in attentional orientation. And this paper has been published only 10 days ago, and was quite happy to notice, to see that they also focused on the fact that you have to distinguish between external attention, the external stimulation, and internal attention to something that you have in your working memory. Okay, the dual process model. The number 3 means that we passed halfway of the talk. And so this is the model that my PhD student and I just published recently. And we suggest that the visual perspective taking task involves 2 processes. One is pertains to the external attention, and this is directed towards specific location, and it is sensitive to the directional features of the other. And the other process instead is involves the internal attention, and it is a voluntary process, and it is sensitive to the mentalizing and to the social features of the other. Okay, both these processes, they work together to give rise to the attentional shift. So, how these models apply to what we know from the literature? Well, Hayward and Ristic in 2018, they found a classical Posner, in a classical Posner type, they compare 2 kinds of stimuli, one social, like a gaze cue, and a non-social, an arrow cue. And they found that the directional features of the other direct attention, regardless of its social characteristic. And this is supporting the importance of the external attention. So the importance of this involuntary orienting process that is not sensitive to the social characteristics of the other. It doesn't matter if the other is social or not. The directional features are sufficient to move our attention. Then a paper that Marco Bertamini and I did a few years ago, you probably know that Marco is very interested in how we perceive how we reason around the mirrors, how we see the reflections of the mirror. And we developed this room observer and mirror perspective task, which consists in a top view of a room, and the dark little bar up there signifies a mirror. Then you have a person that could be to the left, to the center, or to the right of the the room, and behind the person, some objects that could be nails. And the task doesn't involve reaction time. Participants have all the time that they want to answer to the task. They have just to circle how many nails do you think they are visible from in the mirror from the given perspective. And what we found was a facilitation. People were better when we told that the point of view to take into consideration was a person compared to a camera, to something that didn't have the social characteristics of didn't have the social feature. And this is supporting, this is perfectly in line with the fact that there is a voluntary decision process that is affected by the social features of the other. And we did another experiment. We confirmed these results with a completely different, the same paradigm, but we compared the performance of children with and without the diagnosis of autism. And so instead of the nails to the children were, we told that behind the point of view, there were sweets. And again, the task was to say which sweets are visible from a given position for either a teddy bear or a child. And we found that whilst the children without ADS syndrome showed a difference because according to the instruction, if there was a person, so they were sensitive to the social characteristic of the other, this difference disappeared for the children with ADS diagnosis, supporting the importance of the social characteristics of the others. Okay. Now we are moving toward the end of the talk. So I'm going to show you two experiments that we just ran recently. We presented to the last CVP this summer. And this experiment were devised explicitly to test the model. So we wanted to test the first process, so the external attention. So we said that the directional feature of the other should affect the involuntary orienting process, but not the decisional process. So we used as a devil, as you can see here. So in this case, we have both the directional and social feature both pointing to the same direction. Then we have the social only devil. So this is similar to the dragon because we have a devil pointing one direction, but the outward shaped tail that again was selected through a Posner type of experiment was pointing opposite. And finally, we had the condition that is more relevant for the purpose of testing the model, which was the social plus directional plus. It is like where the directional features of the devil were under steroids here, because you see it's very clearly pointing to the same direction because you have the posture as well as the arrow-shaped tail all pointing coherently to one direction. So according to our dual process model, we should find an increase of interference in the reaction time, but no difference in the error rate because the error rate are sensitive to the social characteristics of the stimuli. So they should be the same as the social plus directional. So let's see the results. Again, we use the Bayesian approach. You see that the results, the first two conditions were comparable to the dragon, and we found an interference with the devil pointing with the devil without the arrow-shaped tail. We didn't find interference for the devil when the arrow-shaped tail was pointing opposite. So this is exactly the same as the result that we found with the dragon. But then we found a super interference when the directional features of the other were very clearly toward the same direction. What about the errors? Well, exactly the same amount of interference regardless of the position of the tail, or for that matter, even if the tail is present or not. We found the same interference. So you see the directional features do not affect the errors as much. What about the other aspect, the second process of the model, so the internal attention? So to test that, we took into consideration some studies that have been recently published about the fact that to attribute a social feature to the other, you need to make sure that you need to believe that the other have an intention to point, an intention to look towards one direction. So we devised this type of cue. This is a woman pointing, and again, here we have social plus directional plus. So because as a different from the normal avatar just pointing to one direction, here we have also the arm pointing, like the first figure that I showed you at the beginning of this talk. But then we have a social only condition. But this is different from the dragon and from the devil. Why? Because here, whilst when you saw the image of the dragon, you know, the tail was naturally pointing opposite to the muzzle of the dragon. But here, if you see a person like that looking in one direction and pointing opposite, well, you have only the social characteristics, but you're not sure where the person would like you to look at, okay? And actually, I can make the arm even more important. If you're looking at me and I do like, you know, in a cheeky way, you know that I don't want you to look where I'm looking at, but there is something happening on my back, okay? So what we are expecting here, no interference in the social only condition in neither the reaction time nor in the error rate, because here the social characteristics are ambiguous. The intention is not clear. We don't know where the person is asking us to look at. So in the analysis of reaction time, we found no interference, the same as with the dragon and with the devil. But what is interesting in this experiment is the comparison with the errors. And as you can see, we didn't find an interference for the first time. We didn't find any interference in the error rate, because here, although the person is facing one side, the intention, her intention to look either one direction or the other are not clear. So we didn't find any interference in this case. Right, so to summarize, others with the coherent directional features and unambiguous intention affect both the orienting and the decisional process. And this effect is modulated by the strength of the directional features. So you see, I put on the left the others that are stronger in directing our attention because they are those social and directional plus, where the directional features are under steroids because they're very, very strong in one direction. We have other with contrasting directional features, but unambiguous intention. They generate an interference in the reaction time. And so in the orientation process, measured by the reaction time, but they do not generate an interference in the decisional process, which is measured by the errors. And finally, other with contrasting directional features and ambiguous intention do not shift our attention at all. And so to conclude, our visual attention cannot help being directed towards what others are looking at, and the dot perspective task is an effective experimental paradigm to measure this phenomenon. This phenomenon seems to involve two processes: an involuntary process that orients our attention, and it is sensitive to the directional features of the others and affects the reaction time. The other process is a voluntary decisional process, and it is sensitive to the social features of the other, and it is measured by the errors. Thank you. Exactly 40 minutes. Oh, that's me on the beach. Maybe I should. Please moderate.
Because I'm older. I'm lacking of memory now. So I was just wondering whether you, okay, at some point do you split your explanation in two, depending on the dependent variable, whether it was reaction time or error?
Yeah.
So can you go backward in the literature and see whether your prediction hold also on previous data? Because, I mean, to me, it looks like, I mean, if you had a clear hypothesis before doing the experiment, that wouldn't be perfect in the sense that, you know, finding an expected result and then explaining after is always complicated.
Yeah.
So I was thinking whether at least retrospectively, you can look at the literature and check whether, for example, your hypothesis holds backward.
Yes, obviously. I did. As you showed, some of the results shown in literature are in line, can be are in line with this experiment. As I mentioned, Chris Metal pointed out that in some experiments, not all experiments, reaction time and errors measure different things. And my suggestion, and it was not only Chris Metal, but he was the one that was more clear. I found at least 4 other studies that found a mismatch. Also studying the visual perspective taking, I'm not the first one who found a different result measuring reaction time and errors. But what people did in the past, they just ignored the result of the errors. Okay, so they lost some of the information that they didn't notice because they said, okay, the errors were not important. I don't know why. In the paper, we mentioned those cases. So I'm not claiming that in all cases, reaction time and error measure different things. Okay, in some experiment, and this seems to fit very well. This is a case because they do exist statistical measures where you can combine errors and reaction time, and actually we could analyze the data using those methods. But my point is that we lose information because as I said, the two things, and they are perfect for this specific task. Other tasks in other cases might not be the case. Okay. So, for example, no, I'm not sure. I don't want to say something that I'm not sure. But I'm confident that in some cases reaction time and errors measure the same thing, especially when there is the same process. But in this case, I'm pretty sure that there are 2 separate processes, and the 2 dependent measures measure different things, as it has been shown also in the model. Yeah.
Thank you for your very interesting talk.
Thank you.
I have one methodological question. Which was the error rate, the absolute error rate in the Dragon experiment?
This is very important. So the number of errors in the Dragon condition, well, basically in all conditions were very, very similar. We were expecting more errors in the Dragon and in the devil with the tail pointing opposite, and indeed it was the case, but not very much. The percentage of errors overall was always around 10%.
Okay, because
between 10 and 15.
Yeah, because the task looks to me very easy, and indeed the error rate was quite low.
Very low. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So I wonder if there was enough variability to find any effect in any direction.
Yes.
Because in my experience, when you have paradigms in which you have high error rates, you find effects in a direction similar to that of the reaction times. But when you have paradigms in which the responses are very easy, you don't find anything.
This is very good point. This is very good point. And indeed, in the next experiment that we are programming now, we are trying to increase the error rate by having, for example, a shorter presentation time, or presenting the stimulus for a short period of time, because obviously if we want to measure the decisional process, we need to increase the error rate. You're absolutely right. And this is what we are working on.
And I have another one. I don't know if this probably it doesn't make sense, but I wonder if there are some directional features of the stimuli that become salient only in a social context. I mean, some directional features of the dragon may not be salient in a Posner paradigm, and they can become salient when the social
Is added.
aspect of the entire paradigm is emphasized. In a social context, maybe that you pay more attention to where the dragon is looking, and maybe this is quite different from perspective taking, I don't know, frontier of mind. It's something in between. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I thought about that. So, for example, if you enter into a cinema and you see, this is what I thought, and you see a lot of people facing the screen, it's normal. So, you know, so your attention is not particularly grabbed toward where all the crowd is looking at. However, if you have just one among those people facing something else, facing away from where you know there is a screen, while your attention is more grabbed by where it is. This is very interesting. I haven't planned any experiments on that. I thought, however, of the problem, and it might be worth investigating this. It's very interesting. So the directional features might be more salient in some social conditions, situation. I agree. Yeah, very good.
My comment is more or less on the line of the last one. So I was thinking back at the beginning of the presentation when you told us about the differences between the two experiments, the one with the glasses, the goggles, and the one with the blindfolded. Yeah. And I was thinking that maybe there might be an interaction with some executive components because depending on the instruction, you might stress out aspects that point towards social or the
exactly. This is exactly how we interpret the difference between the two experiments. Because saying to the participant, "Oh, look, when the goggles are red, it cannot see." So you are focusing on the intention, and so this is
And this was exactly what I was thinking. So maybe one way would be to actively manipulate, like the amount of relevance that directional or social information has in the mask itself.
Yeah. So now the experiment that we are running at the moment in the laboratory, there is the other has a vignette with written "look there," but the vignette doesn't have a direction, only the other. So it is reinforcing. And we are comparing this also with the condition where there is an audio clip saying "look there." Okay, but there is, so it's reinforcing the intention, but without altering the visual, the direction.
I see. Nice.
Yeah, thanks for your talk. It was really interesting. This is a totally naive question. Okay, do you have any prediction in your results if you, for example, test a different sample of participants, for example, those who show preferential attention to certain social stimuli or have thinking in theory mind, something like that?
Yes. So one of my colleagues that is working with practitioners in the hospital, nurses, for example, and he wants to use this test, the basic version without having the dragon, etc., to measure, because after, well, I think in all world, because of the stress that nurses went under because of the COVID, he believes that the nurses that are usually desensitized to the condition of the others might have been even more desensitized because of the COVID. And he thought that he could use this stuff. And his hypothesis is that nurses that are very desensitized, they are very stressed by their work, might not show an interference pattern when the condition was in the self condition, because they are a bit desensitized. Yeah. So I haven't done this experiment, but there is this it would be interesting to compare different participants, like a measure of being able to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Right? Thank you. Yeah.
So, very heterogeneous comments on this very nice talk. So for the first part, I was a bit skeptical at the beginning, referring to when you emphasize a lot the link with the Samsung's study. Not because actually I know her rather well from when I was living in Belgium, but it's because I thought that the better framing was the one that you gave later on, when it was more related to the orienting of attention and more, let's say, to the study by Alan Kingston and so on. And in that respect, when I was working on this topic, to me it was relevant. The study of this guy is called Tony Lambert, maybe you know him.
Yeah.
But and then what basically it was that he used a logic that was somehow similar to what you showed and what Elena did. So he worked with this idea of adding a voluntary component to see what's relevant. To cut it short, what he did was to use a directional cue that was either completely symmetric or asymmetric. And basically he showed that already this fact of being slightly asymmetric, it's a huge help for you, I would say, to remember or to orient attention towards whatever you like. So I would say that given I see that, at least in my mind, that the data Samsung package is kind of like related to two very different aspects. And you are focusing on, as you nicely highlighted, only on one of the two. And in that respect, I see that much more related to the field of attentional orienting, honestly, than to that of perspective taking, which, as you highlighted, is much more focused on the theory of mind. Second comment was like I was thinking that this is cool, this association between speed and accuracy. And then I realized that I published one such a dissociation it's not identical, but in a task with a central manipulation where we studied orienting attention towards the side. I sent you the paper.
Yes, please.
I'm not 100% sure as to whether the overlap is perfect with what you found, but I think it's significantly overlapping our findings. So we had no social intention whatsoever, but it was just to say that some processes, if I remember well, voluntary, were more overlapping with the error rate aspect and the involuntary ones with the more automatic. The reason why I do not remember very well was that my aim in the paper was completely different, and this was kind of like an incidental finding. But the senior author liked it, so we added that in the title. But that again was purely incidental. What we studied was to see how by changing.
Who was the first author?
I think it's me, Bonato. It's psych research.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's not really this field. We were interested in seeing with a Posner paradigm, by using something that was non-directional, so different colors. How strong is the association with the color and the orienting towards one or the other?
Okay.
And we manipulated the nice thing about that paper is one of my favorites, is that we changed the association, so the level of what we would call validity effect, unknown to the participants. So we saw within the experiment how this affected how strongly they oriented attention toward one side and the other.
Okay.
However, I think
please send me the paper.
Yeah,
I think I've read it, but yeah, please send it.
Yeah, so in that respect, I was like thinking, also because to me, well, first I super agree with Massimo that it would be nice to see I see it's difficult to disentangle, but I have no idea on eye gaze whether it has been, the discrimination tasks, it should be possible to see how many studies they reported accuracy and how many reaction times, and to see what the global picture. Because that would reinforce your case, which is already interesting, but that's what.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, I agree, absolutely. Yeah.
Back again.
Thank you.
Maybe one last comment.
Yes.
I don't know if you checked because reaction time can be calculated over only correct trials, overall trials.
No, we only right trials, only responses, yes.
So maybe it could be interesting to see
We
what
did.
happens to the other side.
Yeah, we did for control, because in the typical paradigm suggested by Samsung, you measure only the yes. So we controlled also for the no, and we had the same results. That's very important. I agree. Yeah, actually, we published in the paper, in the third paper, 2017. We mentioned that we did also that control, because of course it's still data which are important.
Yeah, I think also this rule out somehow something related to inhibition, like stimulus which interact with inhibiting and conflicting information.
Completely, yeah.
Yeah, if you have the same reaction time in both correct and incorrect.
Yeah. Absolutely. I don't remember now the analysis of the no responses, but we did that control and we didn't find anything. In the paper, we outline also the speed reaction, the speed accuracy trade-off. For that, it was, now I don't remember my memory, the detail, but yeah, I agree, it's very important.
If there are no questions from the chat, if I may, it's the second last.
No, thanks for the interesting talk.
No, I was thinking, so with this, with the task by Dana, what you miss is the spatial, I mean, the temporal kind of like distribution of the effect, because when you use more of a Posner kind of like paradigm, you use SOAs. So you have different measures and you see how it works. No, and there is this long-standing debate on the comparison between the eye gaze and the arrow, because it seems that sometimes there is this phenomenon called the inhibition of return that you find only at very long SOAs. This phenomenon whereby
Yes.
And so I'm thinking that after all, that's the most striking difference with respect to that field, with that literature, that here you just have one measure, you don't get the temporal window where you get the effect. But other than that, I see that it's very close to that field of view.
Okay, one of my dissertation students measure the manipulate the SOA. And we didn't find anything interesting. Now I don't remember, so we decided not. But we did that study with the blindfolded avatar so many years ago, and we changed, we manipulated that. But it would be interesting to do also with Dragon.
Because again, I'm not super much into this field now, but it's this idea of the SOA, if I were you, would be interesting, because that also should see in favor of the dissociation, because you have what I would call the attentional effect that it vanishes with time.
Yeah.
While the social one should still be present, at least the way I see it. That would be my prediction.
No. Yeah. It's a very, very good way to test the model. Yes. I'm sure I have also the experiment already ready about the SOA. I have it here, but
we can test the people here.
No, it's very interesting.
Giulio can do the code, put it in the atoms in 10 minutes. We don't have power analysis. We don't have that.
Okay, I think we can conclude it. I think we can conclude this talk. I would like to thank
Thank you. Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.